Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another exciting episode of Howard's Opinion. I'm your host, Howard, and we're thrilled to have you joining us today. As we dive into the world of sports, I must say that the landscape is constantly evolving, and today's story is a perfect example of that. We're going to be talking about the UCLA Bruins and the buzz surrounding their athletic department. Now, I know what you're thinking. What's all the fuss about? Well, my friends, it seems like UCLA is on the cusp of something big. With the introduction of revenue sharing, the Bruins are poised to take their athletic program to new heights. According to a recent report, UCLA's athletic director, Martin Jarmond, is optimistic about the future of the program. And why shouldn't he be? The team has just finished its first season in the Big Ten Conference, and they're already making waves. With the arrival of talented players like Nico Yamaleva, the excitement around the football team is palpable. But it's not just about football. The men's basketball team is also looking to make a statement. With the hiring of an assistant general manager for each sport, the Bruins are strengthening their infrastructure and setting themselves up for success. And let's not forget about the Olympic sports program. With the 2028 Summer Olympics headed to Los Angeles, UCLA is investing heavily in its Olympic sports, ensuring that they'll be a force to be reckoned with. Now, I know some of you might be thinking, Howard, this all sounds great, but what about the revenue-sharing payments? Well, Jarmond has left it up to the coaches to decide how much each player makes, and it seems like the system is working. The players are being compensated fairly, and the team is benefiting from the influx of talent. As I always say, the devil is in the details, and UCLA's athletic department seems to be getting it right. With a strong focus on revenue generation through fundraising, ticket sales, sponsorships, and new creative endeavors, the Bruins are setting themselves up for long-term success. And let me tell you, folks, this is just the beginning. With the potential for big wins in football and men's basketball, UCLA athletics is on the verge of something special. As Jarmond himself said, this is a great time for UCLA athletics, and I feel like it's just the beginning. Well, there you have it. A thrilling story about a team on the rise. We'll be right back with more fascinating sports news on Howard's Opinion. Welcome back to Howard's Opinion. We're halfway through the show, and I've got a fascinating topic to dive into. You know how the NFL has been gradually increasing its international presence over the years? Well, it looks like that trend is about to kick into high gear. According to Atlanta Falcons owner Arthur Blank, an international game every year for every team is probably on the horizon. Now, I know what you're thinking. How is that even possible? With 32 teams in the league, scheduling 16 international games per season would be a massive undertaking. But it seems like the NFL is dead serious about expanding its global reach. Commissioner Roger Goodell has already stated that the league wants to stage 16 international games per year, and with the current collective bargaining agreement limiting them to just 10 games per year, it's likely that number will increase in the next Labor Day. So, what does this mean for fans? Well, for starters, you can expect to see more games played in exotic locations like London, Dublin, and even Brazil. In fact, the league has already announced a record 7-game international slate for this season, with matchups featuring teams like the Vikings, Steelers, and Browns. And who knows, maybe one day we'll see a team based outside of the United States. Wouldn't that be something? Of course, there are also potential downsides to consider. With more games being played abroad, will we see a decrease in the number of home games for certain teams? And how will this affect the overall competitiveness of the league? These are all questions that will need to be answered as the NFL continues its push for global dominance. But one thing's for sure, the NFL is committed to making its mark on the international stage. And with owners like Arthur Blank pushing for more games abroad, it's likely we'll see some big changes in the years to come. Stay tuned for our final story of the day right here on Howard's Opinion. Welcome back to Howard's Opinion. We've had a fantastic discussion so far, and I'm excited to dive into our final segment. Today, we're going to talk about the Denver Broncos and their prospects for the upcoming season. As we all know, the NFL is a highly competitive league, and every team has its strengths and weaknesses. The Broncos, in particular, have been making some interesting moves in the offseason. One thing that caught my attention was the presence of former NFL coach Adam Gase around the team. Although he doesn't have an official role on staff, it's clear that his experience and expertise are still valued by the organization. Gase has a long history with the Broncos, having worked as a wide receivers coach, quarterbacks coach, and even offensive coordinator during his time in Denver. His connection to the team is also personal, given that his father-in-law, Joe Vitt, is a senior defensive assistant on Sean Payton's staff. It'll be interesting to see if Gase's involvement has any impact on the team's performance this season. Another player who's been making waves is Jordan Jackson, a fourth-year defensive lineman who's still seeking a breakthrough in his career. Despite being selected by the New Orleans Saints in the 6th round of the 2022 draft, Jackson has yet to establish himself as a starter. However, he did manage to play in 17 games last season and even recorded a sack. With the Broncos' strong defensive line, it'll be tough for Jackson to crack the starting lineup, but he could still make a significant contribution as a rotational player. Looking ahead to the upcoming season, the Broncos have a tough schedule ahead of them. They'll face off against some of the top teams in the league, including the Kansas City Chiefs and the Los Angeles Chargers. However, with their strong defense and the emergence of quarterback Bo Nix, they could be a dark horse contender in the AFC West. Of course, only time will tell how the season will play out, but one thing is for sure, the Broncos are a team to watch. With their talented roster and experienced coaching staff, they have all the ingredients necessary to make a deep run in the playoffs. That's all for today's Howard's Opinion. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, these are some of my humble thoughts.